Should you play Resident Evil 4 Remake in 2026? Well, I think that answer is obvious, but if you've never played a Resident Evil game before, why should you play this one? There are a bunch of answers to that question, but it really depends on who you're asking. As I've said before, I only really started getting into Resident Evil with the RE2 remake that released in 2019. Before then, I'd only played them briefly back during the PS1 and PS2 days. But with this game being a remake of the 2005 title, I finally had the chance to dive in and give this game a shot. I know just from speaking with others that RE4 is regarded as one of, if not the best in the entire series, so I went into this with high hopes. So let's discuss Resident Evil 4 Remake and see if it is or isn't worth playing. When making this video, I decided to break it down into 3 separate areas: the base game, Separate Ways DLC, and Mercenaries game mode. I'll be giving my thoughts on each of those areas so we can get a full picture of what the entire game offers.
Just let me go.
Listen. Easy with that. My name's Leon. I'm here in the president's orders and that went well.
So starting with the base game, this takes place 6 years after the events of RE2, with you playing as Leon Kennedy from a third-person perspective as he's on a mission to save the president's daughter after she's been kidnapped. On the surface, you may see this guy walking around and think the gameplay is the same from 2 and 3, but man, you couldn't be more wrong. RE4's gameplay is what makes it so hard to put down. With this title, it took a turn with its gameplay, becoming more action-focused and faster, making everything more hectic. Personally, I love the switch to the gameplay. It's not to say that I didn't like the way it was before, because I really enjoyed 2 and 3, but the change that was made in 4 is just too good. The overall gameplay loop is made with action to be at the center. There's so many times you're constantly surrounded by enemies and have to shoot your way through everything in order to survive. Just the sheer number of enemies on screen is a big change from before. In the previous 2 games, you would run into multiple enemies, whether they be zombies, lickers, or a tyrant, but it was never a whole bunch of them at once. Multiple? Yes. But more than 10? Absolutely not. However, in RE4 Remake, this was definitely the case. It didn't matter if you were in the village, castle, or island, you could run into a lot of enemies at a moment's notice, and you always had to be ready. But more importantly, was how you killed these people. And yes, for reference, these guys are not zombies, but called ganados. The ganados are humans that were infected by the Plaga's parasite. Between them, the cultists, and combatants, all of them would either grab you, throw weapons, shoot you, or do a combination of all 3. You had to be ready at any time for any one of these guys to attack. But back to what really matters, the kills. Using Leon in the combat is more fun than it ever has been to this point. First off, the melee combat is even faster and more fluid than before. When approaching an enemy, you can still use the knife to slash away at them, causing damage, but this knife is way more useful this time around. You're able to parry pretty much any attack using the knife, which seems minute on the surface, but is actually extremely valuable. If a weapon is thrown, you can parry it. Torches swung at you, that can be parried. Chainsaws? Yup, those too. Even certain attacks from bosses can be parried. The knife really is incredible. The caveat to the whole knife system is that the knife can be broken, so it's a must to always keep its durability high or have multiple knives in your inventory at all times. We'll get into upgrades in a bit, but the knives are at the core of this combat system for sure. What happens after you parry an enemy is just as cool, as you're able to perform this melee type of move depending on how close to the enemy you are. So if you parry and are facing the front of an enemy, you can perform this roundhouse kick to knock them and nearby enemies down. Combine that with the knifing and the melee combat is a blast to use. Moving on to the gunplay, this is beautiful. Just like the other games, you have a slew of weapons to choose from. These could be pistols, shotguns, rifles, explosive crossbows, and more. Add on grenades and flashbangs, and Leon had a lot in his arsenal to use against the enemies. What I loved is that there's no right loadout or setup that you have to use in order to get through the game. Yes, there are weapons that are better for certain situations, but even still, you don't have to use them. Everything is up to the player, which is something I'm definitely a fan of. Using these weapons just felt really good. It's hard to describe exactly why, but the fluidity of the weapons is on point. It doesn't matter if you're using a pistol, machine gun, or shotgun, the actual shooting feels great. The sound the guns make when you're reloading, coupled with the impact of the shots, makes it feel like you're really using the weapon. Too many times in games, the weapons lack the impact needed in order to make the gunplay good, which is not the case for this remake. As you kill enemies, they drop ammo and other important resources which will help you greatly on your mission. Sometimes in games, the drops aren't that important, but if you play this game on hardcore or higher, then you're really going to want to pick up literally everything. So many times I was down to my last until I killed an enemy with a knife or a grenade, and then they dropped enough ammo for me to get through to the next section. The ammo that is dropped by enemies or can be found within crates and drawers can be the difference between life and death. They really are that helpful. I liked how you're able to register your weapons into a shortcut so you can use the D-pad on the controller to switch between them really fast. So let's say you want to swap between a pistol and a shotgun, just press the right arrow for one and the left arrow for another. It really is that simple. What this does is that it creates the option to swap fast enough to handle the various enemy types that are thrown at you all at once. For example, you may run into multiple ganados which can be taken out with a pistol, then be caught off guard with a brute wearing a boar mask, resulting in you dying. When you restart the encounter, you can shortcut the shotgun in anticipation of that brute and then take it out quickly when it eventually spawns. Little details like this make all the difference when you're playing on the higher difficulties. Now, I mentioned all these weapons, but there's no way that I could describe this amazing gameplay without the merchant.
Over here, stranger.
If you played the OG, then you already know about this, but for the first time player, the merchant is your best friend. When you first get access to his shop, you'll see that you're able to do a couple of different functions. You can buy, sell, trade, and upgrade. In regards to the weapons, we'll be focusing on the upgrades tab. Within this tab, you can trade money for upgrades for all the weapons you currently have. This was not in place for RE2 and 3, and makes a huge difference in the gameplay for this title. Once you learn which weapons you like using, you can upgrade different aspects of those weapons to give you an advantage in the gameplay. So if you enjoy using the shotgun like myself, you're going to want to upgrade the power on those so you can do more damage to all the enemies. But it gets deeper than that. Many times when on my hardcore run, I found myself having to pick and choose what I upgraded. I didn't always have enough money to upgrade everything so easily. In these situations, you really have to think hard about what would work best in the situation you're facing, because upgrading weapons that don't work well against what you're fighting is pointless. You're going to be upgrading everything over the course of the game, and as you do these upgrades, you'll see the effect they have as you get back to killing. But how exactly do you get the money to purchase these upgrades? Well, the money can be found by looting dead enemies, breaking crates, and searching drawers or chests. But the most beneficial way to get more money would be to collect these treasures that are scattered all across the map and then sell them to the merchant. But you can take it a step further and inlay some of these gemstones into other treasures to increase the value of the main treasure to get more money. Doing this over and over will get you tens of thousands of pesetas to spend. Spending this money on upgrades, weapons, blueprints for crafting, or resources will make your playthrough so much easier to manage. If you're not a fan of searching for treasures, you can always hoard resources and craft more ammo so that you don't have to go out and find it. So there's more than one way to get the job done is what I'm saying. This entire weapon and melee system is done so well in this game, it's unbelievable, especially after playing the previous two remakes. It's so addicting and fun to play. The combat makes the replayability for this title extremely high. It may seem like I'm overhyping this, but trust me, it really is that good. Now, just like most RE games, there are some boss fights that you'll encounter throughout this title. I thought that almost every boss fight was really fun. They require you to use different guns and a little bit of brain power in order to beat these guys. However, one fight just isn't good, and that's the Salazar fight. I don't know what the team was thinking with this, but it just doesn't work. A monster flying all over the place, spewing black venom goo at you while you have to try and shoot them from below is very frustrating. Then it drops these exploding orbs that you can easily run into because your camera is angled up top to look at the boss. This is one of the main things that was changed from the OG, and because I didn't get to this part in that, I didn't know how drastic this change was, but man, I did not like it. Thankfully, if you get the golden egg or save up for a rocket launcher, you can breeze right through this fight. But let's say you try to play this just using your weapons, good luck, because it's going to be a long and frustrating time. Another thing I didn't like was that Leon is still a bit slow. Many times I'd be running away from an enemy, sprinting in the opposite direction, and they'd still be able to grab me. I don't know if there was an attachment for your inventory case to increase sprinting speed, as that would help, but even still, you have to unlock that. So if you don't, this is going to happen to you a lot. Something else that frustrated me is the enemies are still a little tanky on the harder difficulties. My first playthrough was on hardcore and the enemies were still eating shotgun shells like they were getting hit by a pillow. This isn't nearly as bad as it was in RE2 and 3, but at times I found myself saying like, damn, they still ain't dead? Because they were just tanking everything. Then there's Ashley.
Oh my god, bro. Oh, hell no, man. What the fuck, man?
As I mentioned earlier, you have to rescue the president's daughter, and partway through the story, you do end up finding her. but you have to literally escort her to safety while fighting off a bunch of enemies. Keeping her safe while going through these sections can get extremely frustrating at times, especially on a first playthrough. As you're fighting, you can command her to be right behind you or a distance away by pressing a button. Which one works better depends on the situation and your judgment, as there really is no right answer. Where this gets annoying is that the enemy grabs her, she can be carried away and you'll fail the section. Then if she gets caught in an explosion or attack, she'll get stunned and you have to pick her up. Let her get hit again and you'll fail the section. Don't let you shoot her by accident, because that's an automatic death. Having to keep an eye on her at all times while fighting off these enemies makes the game a lot more stressful than it needed to be. To be fair, it is realistic because this is how it would be if you were really escorting someone in real life, but it still gets annoying. I think once I got the hang of what enemies were on the way and started using explosives a lot more, she didn't get stunned as much. It just takes some tinkering to get used to, but even with that, I didn't like the sections where she was with us at all. The last thing I really didn't like were the regenerators. These enemies are exactly as they sound. They regenerate after getting shot and can only be killed by shooting the parasite inside of them. What makes them annoying is that their movements are really weird and it's hard to actually shoot them quickly. Then the devs decided to make like a super regenerator who turns into this spiky version where the parasite is in their brain after killing the main ones located inside their body. Once you get multiple of these things alongside other enemies, you'll eventually want to pull your hair out. It's infuriating to say the least. There isn't much not to like about RE4, but for me, this was about it. However, I do recognize that if there were changes made from the OG that you weren't a fan of, I completely understand if you got a bunch of issues. Talking about the puzzles. Honestly, I've never been a big fan of puzzles, but with this game, I thought they were pretty easy. I'm not sure if it was the puzzle design or location, but doing the puzzles in this remake is really fun. Outside of one or two, I didn't spend too much time on these, as the majority of the time you can always find the solutions within some note or file that is located around the area. On the other hand, even if you brute force the puzzle, you can still find out the solution. Solving puzzles and finding keys to unlock new areas is always so satisfying in these Resident Evil games, and I can't explain why. It's like it just fits, like a good peanut butter and jelly sandwich. It just works. The gameplay for RE4 Remake is unmatched. The combination of new mechanics while still retaining that old RE feel makes this an absolute blast to play. Once you get a hold of how everything works, it'll all just click and you won't be able to put this game down. As I already mentioned, the story for RE4 takes place after RE2 and has you traveling to Spain, where you have to rescue the president's daughter. Again, Resident Evil has never been known to have the most intricate and well-crafted stories, but I think the story in 4 is solid. Unlike 2 and 3, the main threat this time is the Plagas parasite, which turned all these people into bloodthirsty killers. Leon has to find the president's daughter and get her to safety while battling all these different threats that have manifested thanks to this parasite. What I really enjoyed about this story is that the progression feels really natural and smooth. You start off entering the village where you start seeing what's going on, followed by entering the castle where things escalate a bit, followed by everything culminating on the island. The pacing in this game is done really well, with there being lots of highs, but the lows come in at the perfect time. Every time you do something epic, the fall off is never so drastic that you'll find yourself saying, okay. Let's move on. The small cast of characters in this story does a great job at keeping things interesting, and as you discover everyone's motivations, this story really starts to begin opening up. Just like other Resident Evil games, you have to read files and notes to gain additional lore regarding the overarching story. Reading this information allowed me to understand the village and how the parasite affected different characters within the story. You see how everything went to shit and why it happened. I think what makes this game's story so good is that it's kinda cheesy at many times, but it works. Leon's one-liners along with the things that happen make it seem like it was ripped out of an early 2000s action flick. Playing through this with the incredible visuals is the icing on the cake. Compared to the OG, the remake looks superior in every way possible. Of course, if you love the OG, you may not agree and think that the lighting or atmosphere in that is better, but for me, I just don't see it. Every area is detailed and colorful, but things are still dark and gloomy when they need to be. The entire atmosphere and mood within this small area of Spain really make it feel like you're in Leon's shoes, like you can feel what he's going through. There's nothing scarier than opening a door to see a ganado yapping off a bunch of unknown words in Spanish as they try to kill you, or hearing them chant threats and other phrases off in the distance before they have even discovered your presence. I played this on PC, so everything looked absolutely incredible, and there were many times I found myself in awe of just how good everything looked. This game visually really is a treat. What the story does really well is that it slowly ties everything together. You know what the main objective is, but then as you try and go about accomplishing that, you're able to gain more information about the real thing everyone is after. You discover what has caused all of this and all the parties involved. Sure, there may be moments where you don't care or they don't hold that much weight, but for the majority of the game that isn't the case. This plot does what it's supposed to do, create an entertaining and action focused story that will have you invested just enough for you to care about everything that's going on. In its entirety, the base game for Resident Evil 4 Remake is simply fantastic. Although it's not perfect, it's so much fun to play. As soon as I started playing this, I found myself not being able to put it down. But now let's switch gears to the DLC, Separate Ways. Later on after this game's release, the Separate Ways DLC eventually dropped. This game features a returning character from RE2, Ada Wong, who we thought died towards the end of that game. However, she did indeed survive, as involved throughout the events of RE4 as we run into her multiple times with Leon, and she's actually a crucial character in regards to the main story. Without going into spoilers, this DLC consists of going through the game from Ada's perspective, seeing what she was doing while Leon was moving forward along with his own mission. In terms of gameplay, a lot of it is the same. Everything that I've already discussed is still there, as you play from a third-person perspective, have a bunch of weapons, and fight a lot of enemies. Even the ammo crafting and merchants still operate the same. The main difference with her gameplay is within the exploration, as she has the ability to use this grappling hook that has her zipping all over the place like Batman. You can use this hook when approaching obstacles, as when you get close you'll see this blue square appear with a button prompt over top. Press the button and she will zip up that platform. This is useful during both the normal gameplay and boss fights, as you can zip to dodge enemies and stay alive during all these moments. It's not a game-changing mechanic, but something that is worth noting. You do fight some different bosses in her campaign versus Leon's, and it's cool to go against them using her weapons because things can get dicey, especially on hardcore. Specifically, there was one boss fight in the village where I ran out of all materials. I had no ammo, nothing to use to craft the ammo, and there was nothing to pick up around the area, so all I had was my knife. So the only thing I could do was knife the creature to death, and somehow it worked. This was just one encounter, but the differences in her gameplay versus Leon's make it worth playing through at least once. As you could probably guess, the meat and potatoes is with her story. The story beats for Ada show a lot of the same events, but also give more information on things we didn't see within Leon's portion of the story. We see who she is working for, why she is doing it, and what she had to go through in order to accomplish her goal. The pacing for her story is just as good as the base games, with everything feeling fresh and nothing getting stale. Everything was on a slow ramp up until it climaxed at the end on the island. To have a DLC that doesn't offer a whole bunch new and still have it be interesting is a testament to this game's story. Many times I found myself saying, "Oh, okay, so this is how this happened," because it gave more background information on crucial elements of the story. One thing I do know is that the change in Ada's English voice actress had people up in arms. There were people ready to go to Capcom with their pitchforks and burn the place down because her voice sounded so bad. Personally, I think people were exaggerating, but yes, there is a noticeable difference in the voices, so I see why the criticism was there to begin with.
Surprised you made it this far.
FBI, huh? What's going on here?
Sorry, that information's classified.
Where you going?
Do yourself a favor. Stop asking questions and get the hell out of here.
You? Leon S. Kennedy. You haven't changed. You just think you have.
If it ruins your immersion, I understand, but I think her voice fits with Ada just based off the character's personality, as she isn't overly expressive anyways. I doubt Capcom will recast the actress, so if you don't like it, you may just have to accept this new voice going forward. For me though, I'm cool with it. For only $10 currently on Steam, I don't see a reason why not to get this, as it does a great job at giving the fullest picture of the entire RE4 story. It's similar to RE2 where you have Leon and Claire's story, and playing through both gives you the whole thing, but with this it costs a little bit extra. Personally, I think the price is justified, as her story is more of an expansion as it's longer and you'll spend more time playing this than Claire's story, at least on a first playthrough. Regardless, for only $10, I think this DLC is definitely worth the price. For a DLC that was part of the OG, I think the remake version is done just as well. Yes, I'm unaware if there was any additional changes made to this as well, but judging it based off of what it is, I really enjoyed myself, and if you like the base game, I'm sure you'll like this DLC too. So if you're thinking about skipping this, I wouldn't do that, as you'll get the most of your RE4 experience by playing this DLC. Plus, it's Ada. What's not to like? Moving on to the last section, Mercenaries. Now going into this game, I had no idea what this mode even was. I had initially planned to skip it completely, but when a friend of mine told me what it was about, I had to give it a try. To put it simply, this is an arcade style mode where you just kill stuff. And for someone like me who loves this game's combat, it's right up my alley. So when playing this mode, you can choose from a slew of characters like Leon, Ada, Luis, Krauser, and more. After playing some games, I liked playing as Hunk the most. He had this submachine gun that would shred all the enemies throughout the level, and this included the brutes too. Facing wave after wave of the infected never gets old. You had your main weapon, a sub weapon, and other throwables that you could use to kill everything. The weapons each character had were specific to them and would change as you use a different character on each level, so naturally you're going to gravitate towards playing as one character over another. Within these stages, you would play in one of the locations from the game. This could be the village, castle, island, or somewhere else, but you should recognize each of these locations as you unlock them. As you begin a match, a bunch of enemies will spawn and you'll be forced to kill as many as possible in order to get the highest score in the allotted time. You could increase the time by collecting these green time orbs located all around the area, which will add a set amount to the timer. Keep killing and getting the orbs and you could play for a lot longer than the initial time limit. As you complete each stage, you'll receive a rank for how you performed, and if you did well enough, you would unlock a new character and new stage. Rinse and repeat, and eventually you'll have everything unlocked. I think this game mode is a really simple way of scratching that RE4 combat itch without having to dive into the base game or DLC. Honestly, this mode is genius considering how good the actual combat is for this game. Creating an entire mode solely focused on the combat and letting you play with other notable characters from the story is a great way to keep you coming back to the game long after you finish the main story. Many times now we don't get cool modes like this just added into the game, or if we do, then we end up having to pay extra for the same content. However, with RE4 Remake, that is not the case. Mercenaries is such a fun mode to chill out and play. Almost like when playing this mode you can turn your brain off and not think, just shoot and kill. Simple and straight to the point. I love it. Overall, Resident Evil 4 Remake is exactly what I come to expect from a remake. Everything from the gameplay and story to the visuals and performance are everything I hoped it would be. As someone who never completed a full playthrough of the OG, all of this felt brand new to me. When someone wonders what level of quality you should expect from a remake, I would point them directly to this. So to answer the question, should you play Resident Evil 4 Remake in 2026? That answer would be,
Give me a hell yeah!
this game is my favorite Resident Evil game out of the entire series. Growing up, I didn't get a chance to dive into the original like that on PS2, but now that I experienced this remake, I get all the hype. Everything in this game is just peak. The combat, setting, everything is done so well. If you like other Resident Evil games but never played this, then I definitely recommend it. Or if you're a fan of action-packed gameplay with some creepy elements to it, this game is perfect for you. If I had to give this game a score, I'd give it a 10. Of course, no game is perfect, and I understand if you were to tell me that you like the OG more, but after playing that briefly and watching others' full playthroughs, I just don't see it. Regardless, RE4 Remake is an absolutely fantastic title that I think everyone should play at least once. Is it the greatest game of all time? But then again, what game is? I'm looking forward to going through Resident Evil 5 next, as that's another game I never got around to playing either. What did you think about Resident Evil 4 Remake? Did you like this or the original more? Let me know in the comment section below, and if you enjoyed this video, feel free to watch one of my other reviews right here.